Welcome to another episode of CC Top Solutions. In this episode, we're gonna do some rework. We still have some weepage in our thermostat housing, I'll show you. So we're gonna go ahead and replace that gasket again. And I'm also gonna walk everyone through timing on the small block Ford. So, see how we have a little bit of green up here? Anytime the engine gets up to temperature, right when the thermostat opens, I can really get that whiff of that antifreeze smell. Drives me crazy. And usually after I'm done driving, there's a couple drips down here, and that also drives me crazy. So we're gonna go ahead and replace this gasket again, and this time we're gonna be a little more liberal with the amount of RTV we put on it. We're also gonna walk through the fuel injection system on this, which is a Holley Pro Jection 4DI. 22 years ago I bought it, and it works pretty good. And timing. Timing is absolutely crucial for any engine. I learned an awful lot with this and a variety of other cars over the years. But ultimately right now, this engine is running with about 33 degrees of timing when it's just sitting still, probably around 43 at low load, light throttle driving, and about 34 at wide open throttle. It's a really good timing setup, which mimics a setup with a vacuum advance, but people frequently don't realize it. I'll show you what I'm talking about. So the first thing we're going to do is jack the car up so we can drain the antifreeze out of the system without making a huge mess everywhere. I frequently save old radiator hoses. I like to collect them. Not really, but I do save these for instances like this. What I'm gonna do is open the petcock and quickly put this old radiator hose right over it so all the fluid flows right down the hose into a bucket. Pro tip. She's still squirting everywhere, but there it goes. Oh, I don't know. I dropped the petcock. It's probably gonna be more antifreeze in the radiator than this bucket can hold. So this might be a mess. Oops. All right, well, at this point, I don't even need the hose anymore. It's just draining right in the bucket, which is good. Now I can find the petcock, hopefully, before it drains completely empty. I didn't want to do that. Hey, I was lucky. The thing was floating. That worked pretty good. Very minimal spillage. All right, I'm gonna show you guys how that worked out. As you can see, we have very little spillage down here, just a little bit on the jack and stuff, but that's okay. And then in the engine bay, we have almost no spillage. You know, you can see a little bit down there. Of course, I've wiped some of it up, but you know, this is definitely the clean way to do this. Next step, we're gonna go ahead and pull our radiator hose and shop vac any radiator fluid that's trapped in there out. Well, that time the vacuum didn't work, as you can see. Normally that works pretty good. I'm not sure what went wrong, but I'm gonna clean that all up. Okay, we've removed our thermostat housing, and you can see the condition of the gasket. It was weeping up around the top. You can actually see where it was weeping, right up here. And it seemed to do it as soon as the gasket would open. So my thought is, this time around, I'm gonna go ahead and load it up with even more RTV. So we got looking at our thermostat housing. I couldn't believe this was leaking with how tightly sealed that gasket was. And look what we found. I'm gonna set the camera down right here so you guys get like kind of a good view of a flat surface. Here's our thermostat. This normally sticks in there like this, right? Take a look up here at the top. Look at the lip. The thermostat doesn't sit flush within the housing. You can feel there's a little bit of play there, but in this up here, this is the top. This is where it was weeping. And then you look at the bottom of the housing, see how the thermostat sits nice and flush? So what do I think is causing that? Well, I decided to take out our Harbor Freight caliper, you know, and I measured it. Down here at the bottom of the housing, this is about 35 thousandths deep. Up here at the top where it's weeping, this is about 14 thousandths. Actually, there's a real low spot right here that probably even less than 14 thousandths. So what we're gonna do is just take our Dremel and go ahead and try and make this deeper so that the whole thing in here, so the thermostat actually sits completely flush inside there instead of having a high point outside the surface. That was more than likely what was causing our weeping. The thing just couldn't seal. You can really feel the high point right here. That's bad. Pretty interesting. Brand new thermostat housing, made in Taiwan. So I've ground off a good 15 thousandths to kind of make it so our thermostat sits deeper inside this groove. It still does not sit 100% flush. There's you know, a couple thousandths that it sticks out. So I think what I may do is actually double up gaskets. What we have here is a brand new Holley gasket. Originally I'd used the Fel Pro. If I remember correctly, the Fel Pro was about 27 thousandths thick. I haven't measured them all. And this one here is the one that came with the Speedway Motors Thermostat housing. This one was, if I remember correctly, 37 thousandths thick. So it's thicker than the Fel Pro, but you see how it's so big that the thermostat doesn't get held in by it? So what my thought here is to put the maul on to hold the thermostat in, and then to put this on top of the maul to really give it a lot more gasket sealing capability. That's my plan. I don't think we're gonna have to worry about this leak ever again. Also, take a look. You can see I've got our gasket surface as clean as I can possibly get it. All of our gasket surfaces. I'm sure some people at home are saying, geez, Chris, you just didn't have your gasket surfaces clean. That's why it leaked. And you're completely glossing over the fact that this housing had a, I don't know, 20 thousandths difference in depth, and the thermostat stuck out on the top. Gloss over that and just blame me. Not happening. There we go, double gasketed and lots of RTV on it. I'm gonna go ahead and wipe the excess off after I install it. As you can see, we have our thermostat mounted nicely inside there. It's still centered the way it should be in the housing, which is good. That means that it didn't shift while I was installing it. And we are double gasketed and tightened down fairly well. I'm assuming this will not leak. It's interesting when I'm looking down here. That seems like a heck of a gap, but I'm sure where the actual metal is, there's no gap because it's tightened down pretty good. But we're gonna let this stuff cure. And tomorrow we'll double check it, we'll retorque it, and then we'll top it off with fluid and fire it up, let it heat cycle, and then tighten again. Good morning, we're back. Nice and warm this morning, about 25. It's like I'm a kid at Christmas time. I just have to know if this is gonna seal. So I'm out here, I'm gonna go ahead and top this off, fire it up, make sure there's no leaks. First step, let's put the antifreeze back in the car. You can see it is bone dry down there, so no leaks. I'm gonna go ahead and fire it up, let it warm up, pressurize the system. It's not all the way full yet, but we do need to run the engine to circulate the coolant through the engine and get the air out of the engine. Before we fire this up, I want to talk a little bit about the fuel injection because we got some viewer mail asking about it. It's a very old school setup. It's the Holley Pro Jection 4DI. I bought it in like 1998 or 1999. I'm using the Ford style TFI ignition system distributor. Basically what we have going on here, this can digitally advance and retard your timing, and you set it up using a laptop, which I have in the passenger seat of the car. It's a Windows XP laptop, it's awesome. So you have your electronic timing control, but you can also manually rotate the distributor. So you can apply an offset to your entire timing control system. So right now I have this thing offset 10 degrees. So anything we're seeing on the computer screen when I'm tuning it, so for example, if it shows I have 20 degrees of advance, because I have another 10 degrees of offset here, it's actually 30 degrees of advance. You understand? Now, let me pop up the stock Ford 5.0 injection timing curves. You can see timing is a function of both load and RPM. The same applies with the Holley setup. The same also applies when you're using an old vacuum advance style distributor. My tuning curves are very similar to what Ford uses from the factory. So this is the actual software that I use to interface with the Holley Pro Jection. It's Autochart Pro. This was a homemade type of setup back in the, I think this is actually from 2002. And this is one of the original softwares that could look at your car's parameters while you were driving and recommend revisions to your fuel map, which was really state-of-the-art back in 2002. Nowadays, I think all of the injection systems self-learn. Back then, it was a little tougher, so I bought this aftermarket, and it's pretty cool. I still use it to this day, even though it's dated. All right, we are in neutral. I'm gonna go ahead and start this up, show you guys what you can kind of see with this. We've turned our ignition to on. We're gonna hit go and just monitor our gauges when we start this. You can actually monitor actual gauges, or you can get your chart style data recording. Right now, we'll just pull both up just to show you, and you can change everything you're looking at. Spark advance is really the key one, and right now, since it's relatively cold, I'm also curious to see what happens with our idle motor. I did actually mess with those settings off camera. Originally, I had it set to go to about 80 when it was cranking, so it would start. Let's see what happens. Yeah. See how slowly it opens up? Maybe I should set it to go up to around 200. It'd start up, maybe 250. But all right, there it is, it's running. I didn't touch the throttle. So map, that's manifold absolute pressure. That's basically engine load. Throttle angle, that's pretty self-explanatory. O2, so I have the oxygen sensors disconnected right now. In the back of the audience, somebody had a really good question. How do I know there's a 10-degree offset out of the distributor? Well, let me show you. Okay, we have our timing light hooked up. We are idling at about 960 RPM. And we're gonna go ahead and advance our timing so that we can see our mark. See how top that center is slowly coming in on our timing pointer? There. Now our timing pointer is like right about bouncing around on top that center. There is a little bit of an offset there. I'm not sure what causes that. I'm also not sure how well you guys can see this. But that is showing that we are running 33 degrees advance, right? At idle. Now you go in and you look at the fuel injection, and that's showing that we're running 25 degrees advance. See how that's bouncing around at 25? So there you go. We're actually running about an 8-degree mechanical offset. So I just made a huge mess. Boo! And that is 180 degrees. What happened, I had the cap off, I was letting it come up to temperature, and my thought was once the thermostat opened, all the air would come out of the system. That didn't happen. Instead, once the thermostat opened, all the fluid came out of the system. Apparently there wasn't a whole lot of air in there. So, big mess. I'm gonna go ahead and try and clean and dry this all up, and I wanna try and ensure, I don't wanna start the engine because you can see all the antifreeze right here. I don't want that to suck and get blown all over the engine. So don't make that mistake. Okay, it's basically up to temperature. We're showing 172. We've corrected our antifreeze situation, topped it back off, and we've also made that adjustment for the idle air starting position. Let's see if it fires up easier now. Although I noticed the idle motor didn't get anywhere near the, I think I set it to 150. Whatever. I guess because it's warm, it just fired right up. Well, this is at the point now where I can go ahead and rev it. Seems to be running great. Out here we have no leaks. Still a little bit dripping off the bottom of the radiator. I can't stand that. Hopefully it's not getting flung into the fan and thrown all over the engine bay. I'd say let's back this thing outside and maybe do some draggy testing. Who wants to go for a spin? That's fun. Alright, let's see how quickly you can 0 to 60. I'm guessing 6 seconds. So that was a ton of fun. I hope you enjoyed watching it. Here we are, I've put maybe a couple hundred miles more on it since then. Let's take a look and see how our thermostat gasket's holding up. Anybody have any guesses? Come on in here. All right, so this is still hot. I was just driving it a few minutes ago. Unfortunately, you still can see a little bit of weepage. I've put a couple hundred miles on it. You can tell it's very little weepage. I mean, just look down here. You can see nothing pooled up in there. I've tightened these, I don't know how many times. Almost every time I drive it, I have to retighten them. So, I don't know. I did buy another thermostat gasket. Maybe I'll pull this another thermostat housing. Maybe I'll pull this housing out and show you a comparison. The one I bought instead of this Speedway Motors one is a Scott Drake one. It looks pretty nice. Anyways, that was a lot of fun. We're gonna wrap this episode up and we're gonna move into our next episode. Hope to see ya.